Okay, today we're going to do section 1-6, subtracting integers. We just finished a couple of days of working with adding integers, and hopefully by now you remember the rules for adding same sign and adding different signs, because addition of integers is necessary to subtract integers. Let me tell you what I mean. The rule for subtracting integers says that we're going to add the opposite. We're going to add the opposite. Or we're going to use what we call same, opposite, opposite. And that's what you'll hear me say most often. So generally I abbreviate that to SOO. Once you've done that, then use the rules for adding integers. All right, so when we subtract integers, we're actually adding the opposite. Again, you're going to hear me say same, opposite, opposite a lot. If you do that every time and you understand the rules for adding integers, this is going to be very simple. So for our examples, subtracting positive, we're going to start with subtracting a positive integer. And then we'll move to subtracting a negative integer. So for number 1, 3 minus 8. All right, when we were in second grade, we were taught, I can't subtract a bigger number from a smaller number. But now that we know that negative numbers exist, we know that we can do that. So 3 minus 8 means we're going to do same. So the first number stays the same. We're going to change the subtraction to addition. So that is our opposite, our first opposite. And then we're going to change 8 to its opposite. And the opposite of 8 we've talked about is negative 8. So there's same, opposite, opposite. First number stays the same. Change the subtraction to addition. Change the second number to its opposite. Then we're going to use our rules for adding integers. Now some of you are going to look at that and say, okay, that's -5, I know that. And that's fine. If you can do that, that's great. But most of you are not going to be able to do that at this point. So we're going to remember our rule for adding integers with different signs, and we're going to subtract the two integers, 8 minus 3. We know the answer is 5, but we know that we had more negatives when we started, and so our answer will be negative because we had more negatives. So -5 is our answer. Let's look at number 2. 4 minus 5. You can also think of it like on a number line. If I have 3 and I have to take 8 away, I'm going to have to move 8 spaces to the left on the number line, so we know we're going to go into the negative numbers. The same with 4 minus 5. We're going to have same, the 4 stays the same, subtraction changes to addition, so that's our first opposite, and the 5 changes to a -5. That's our second opposite. Hopefully at this point, some of you are starting to see that that's going to be -1. But if not, you're going to take 5 minus 4 equals -1 because we had more negatives. All right, just like addition, we're going to spend a couple of days on subtraction. So the main thing for you to do while taking these notes is get the notes down and start to memorize the rules and understand the rules. Number 3 is a little bit different. We're starting out with a negative number, and we're going to subtract 9. So we're going to keep our -2 the same. That's our same. Change the subtraction to addition. That's our opposite. And change 9 to -9. That's our opposite. So same, opposite, opposite. And then we're going to use our rule for adding same signs. When you add same signs, you add the 2, and you give them the sign of the integers. In this case, both were negative, so this one is going to be negative as well. Pause the video for a few minutes. Try to work problems 1, 2, and 3 in the practice problems, and then come back so we can complete the video. Okay, our next concept is subtracting negative integers. there's a little bit that we have to do here because when we subtract negative integers, they're just going to be a little bit different, although the rule is going to be the same. So let's look at 4 minus negative 6. We're going to leave the 4 the same, change the negative or the subtraction to addition, there's your first opposite, and change negative 6 to positive 6, there's your second opposite. Adding integers, 4 plus 6 is 10. So that one was actually pretty simple. Number 2, we're going to take negative 5 minus negative 10. So the negative 5 stays the same. The subtraction becomes addition. There's your opposite. And the negative 10 becomes positive 10. There's your opposite. Now we're adding different signs. Negative 5 plus positive 10. In order to do that, you may look at it and say, well, I know negative 5 plus 10 is 5. You may use a number line and figure out that negative 5 plus 10 is 5. But if you don't do either of those, the rule is we're going to add different signs, so we're going to subtract them. In this case, we have more positives, so 10 minus 5 is 5, because we had more positives. Okay, let's take a look at the back side of your notes. At the top, there are 2 practice problems. I want you to take your time, pause the video, and practice those 2 problems, and once you finish them, come back so that we can complete this section. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is evaluate algebraic expressions. You're going to hear that a lot. You're going to do that in nearly every section that we work on this year. There's just a lot of evaluating algebraic expressions. One thing you'll want to think about is the substitution property when evaluating. And we have substituted a lot already, and you're going to get to understand what substitution is and know that when you're doing this, you're using the substitution property. So here, number 1 says y minus 10. Up here it says that y is 8, so we're going to put 8 in for y, or substitute 8 for y, 8 minus 10. Now I have a subtraction problem, so I'm going to use same, opposite, opposite. The 8 stays the same, subtraction to addition, the 10 changes to a negative. Now I'm adding different signs. When I add different signs, I subtract, so 10 minus 8 is 2. But I have more negatives, so my answer is going to be negative 2. Number 2, 12 minus z. 12 minus z, and z is negative 12, so we're going to put the negative 12 in parentheses. We're going to use same, opposite, opposite, just like we did in the first example. So the 12 stays the same, subtraction to addition, and the negative 12 becomes positive 12, or its opposite. 12 plus 12 is 24. Example 3 is a little bit more difficult because it gives you 3 different integers to work with. So we'll substitute in first. We have x, which is negative 3, minus y, which is 8, plus x, which is negative 3. So we've got negative 3 minus 8 plus negative 3. What we're going to do is treat these separately. So what we will do with this is we will go ahead and start with the first 2. Same, negative 3, change the subtraction to addition, and change the 8 to a negative 8, and then add your negative 3 at the end. So we had to work with the subtraction, same, opposite, opposite, and then add positive or add negative 3. Then when we add them, they're all negatives. So we know that our answer will be negative. We've got 3 plus 8 is 11, plus 3 is 14. So our answer is negative 14. Pause the video, take just a couple of minutes to work the problems in the practice, and then come back so we can complete our lesson. Okay, at the bottom we want to determine whether each statement is true or false, and if it's false we want to give a counterexample. So we want to know, is subtraction of integers commutative? Remember that commutative means that I can switch the order of the numbers and the answer will still be the same. So with subtraction of integers, this is going to be false. Because if I subtract 3 minus 2, I get positive 1. And that does not equal 2 minus 3, because 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So 3 minus 2 is 1, 2 minus 3 is negative 1, and they don't equal. So I've got an equal sign with a line through it. So subtraction of integers is not commutative. Subtraction of integers is associative. Doesn't matter how I group them in getting my answer. Well, let's think about it. Let's make a problem here. Let's say 1 minus 2 minus 3, and let's put parentheses around the 1 minus 2, and then 1 minus 2 minus 3, and put parentheses around the 2 minus 3. 1 minus 2 is negative 1 minus 3. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4, and 1 minus negative 1 is 2. So that does not work. So that is false. Make sure that you understand the concepts in the video. The main thing I want you to understand is the subtraction rule and how it works with the addition rules. So go back and review your addition notes, review over your subtraction notes, and come to class ready tomorrow with any questions you have, and we'll start on the homework. Keep in mind we're going to spend a couple of days on this lesson as well so that we can make sure that everybody understands it.